Is this what you've been waiting for? Piers Morgan has sat on the political fence for very long, but I think he may have practically announced his political endorsement in the most unapologetic way I've seen. And better yet, it happened on British television to a host that unironically just kept parroting the same talking points that we see here. Take a look for yourself and you'll see exactly what I mean.
The idea that you all have to be stifled, censored. That's why I called my show Uncensored. No. And you should all be able to disagree with each other. You and I should be able to go to the pub, have a few pints of the black stuff, argue about everything, and then stay friends. Funny enough, Emily and I are like that. We have terrible dinner parties where we end up shouting at each other, and then we can't wait to do it again. That's how society should be.
That's how society should be. It's not how society is.
No. You
have kids. Deep down, do you not worry about the world that Donald Trump is going to leave your kids and my kids?
No, I don't. I would have been more worried if Kamala Harris had won, because it would have sent a message that this whole woke, as Elon Musk calls it, the woke mind virus. Now, woke has got a bad rap, rightly. What it used to be was raising awareness for social and racial injustice. By that criteria, I'm woke. But that's not what it is anymore. What it's become is a kind of new form of fascism, where people who identify as woke, they want to dictate how everybody else, how they dress, how they speak, what they find funny, the jokes that they can laugh at, the heroes that they can revere, the books they can read, the movies they can enjoy. That is fascism. It's the very thing that they profess to hate most.
Piers Morgan's pretty late in catching up to it, but perhaps better late than never, because if you actually zoom out a bit into the broader Western world, we're seeing the US turn the tide on this woke strand of leftism, while countries like Britain and Australia just begin to find their left-wing movements turning woke and borrowing ideas from the US. That's why I think Piers Morgan, being a Brit, has such an interesting vantage point to comment on it. By the way, we're having some really important conversations of our time, so be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to not be left out. Now, the truth is that far-left flavor of politics has been categorically rejected by the United States, and it has now even divided the Democratic Party as they now realize they've gone too far, to the point that their traditional electoral base doesn't even recognize them anymore. A study from Navigator Research this week revealed something that should honestly be worrying for Democrats, with focus group participants who switched from Democrat to Republican saying things like this, and I quote, "I think with their very liberal views and standpoint and acceptance to have different parties, different groups, religious groups and or race, religion, I think that is where the party wants you to align with its diversity, and aligning with the Democrats, I think it's a bad thing." In other words, former Democrat voters were just tired of being forced to align with the party's out-of-touch politics rather than the other way around, and as much as it may still be politically incorrect to say in the place like Britain, what Piers Morgan said next should be a lesson for Britain's leftist movements and parties on why not to do that if they want to avoid similar defeats at the hands of the electorate.
Here's one example I'll give you, and this might not be popular in the room, but I don't care. And it's this. In America, the most popular ad that Trump did was about the whole issue of trans athletes in women's sport, which I've been very vocal about for years. I think it's completely unfair, unequal, and it shouldn't be happening. I also want equal rights and fairness for all trans people at the same time. There's nothing to do with being transphobic. It's about protecting women's rights. Trump did an ad, and all it said was, Kamala is for they, them. Trump is for you. They reckon it was the most effective 30-second political ad in modern times because it resonated with the public.
You say that, but the exit polls after that American election didn't talk about pronouns. They said people were voting on the economy. And
yeah, but that ad, they reckon, the New York Times, which is a liberal newspaper, they said that ad may have swung it by 2 to 3 points. Unbelievably effective.
And you know why that was effective? It's because that's the sentiment that many voters felt. And Donald Trump just channeled it better into actual votes at the ballot box. Forget even what your opinion is on modern gender politics, because that's not what this is about. And contrast the advert that Piers mentioned with something like the Man Enough ad, which the Kamala Harris campaign put out. It looked like political satire, but it somehow wasn't. With big, burly, and masculine men, the ad tried to convince you that along with cooking steaks and rebuilding carburetors, the manliest thing you can do is vote for a woman. Another tone-deaf ad targeting women told them, quote, what happens in the booth stays in the booth, and that woman should be secretive about voting Kamala, even if their MAGA Republican husband doesn't like it. Apart from just being cringe, these ads played on identity politics rather than portraying the substance that Kamala wanted to bring as a candidate. And of course, it backfired hopelessly. But the lack of perspective on that which still exists in this new tide of leftism in Britain is really telling, and it will most likely end in similar failure if it's not truly connected to the needs of the working class voter.
A lot of people would also say that the trans community out there are people who are fearful and need supported, and the idea of being woke isn't about being a fascist. It's about going through life instead of having your eyes closed, having your eyes open, and maybe just trying to be kind.
Do you even believe that?
I do.
Really?
I think there's a lot of people
Come on. That's not what woke means. Woke is people running around screaming hysterically about absolutely everything, and they want to dictate how people lead their lives. And we are a free democratic society. You should be able to lead your life how you want to lead it. Have the opinions you want to have. Have the right to live your life how you want to lead it.
Do you believe everything you say, or is there an element, Piers, of stirring the pot?
I do. I genuinely hate vegan sausage rolls. And by the way, so does everybody else, because their sales are bombs. I was right about that as well. Look, I do believe what I say. It's not like I don't just literally sit there and go, let me find something to wind up all the wokies, even though they are very easy to wind up. But I genuinely believe what I say. But again, I come back to, you might categorise my views as controversial. I don't. I genuinely think...
I just categorise some of your views as wrong. I don't think they're controversial.
Whoa.
In the same way that you said that I'm wrong.
OK. Let's test that theory. Which of my views do you think are so wrong?
I would say...
Patrick, how long have we got?
How long have we got?
He's running down the clock. You see my point?
See, just scratch one layer deep in this identity-obsessed ideology exposes how shallow it really is. The term woke did have a very noble meaning back when it was used in the early 20th century to call on people to be awake to social and racial injustice. But it is morphed into something much different, to the point that denying it is almost like sanitizing the term to meaninglessness. Woke politics dons a lens of identity along racial and gender lines and pits groups against groups on a collective oppressor versus oppressed narrative. And it's inherently intersectional in modern day and age because, of course, every person is a unique mix of identities. That's precisely where the Democrats lost touch with the voter base, because rather than treating them as individuals, it sold them a bill of goods that was hopelessly disconnected from the real concerns of the voters, like inflation, illegal immigration, foreign wars, and a sense of upward mobility. And honestly, if the left is losing people like Piers Morgan, Bill Maher, Stephen A. Smith, and Joe Rogan, who used to be reasonable liberal progressives, it should get the message that something's terribly wrong, and these people were perhaps just a small snapshot of the larger exodus that has happened from the Democratic Party among center leftists and independents, eventually leading to Donald Trump's victory.
Well, interestingly, I would say that Trump won this time for three reasons. He won because people trusted him more on the economy and to fix the cost of living crisis. They trusted him more to fix the crisis on the southern border in America, where they got a genuine illegal immigration crisis. Nearly 10 million people have come in illegally in the last 4 years. But actually, he talked about this when he won. He represents to a lot of Americans a core of common sense, he called it. And I think I'm the same. You know, people say to me, oh, you're so controversial. I'm like, well, which of my opinions is actually that controversial?
So you think you're the voice of common sense?
I don't think my opinions are that controversial. I think that actually they're the opinions of the majority. When I was coming here today, the number of people who came up to me at the airport were like, Piers, we're right behind you. Keep talking the common sense. Am I near enough? I am actually Irish, by the way, just so you know. I've got Galway roots. My father was from Galway. So I do feel like I'm one of you, even if you'd rather I wasn't.
So,
Can you imagine that? If you looked at a very broad historical picture, people from decades ago would hardly be able to recognize the Republican Party today, as they've shed a lot of their formerly true right-wing beliefs and positions to move more to the center. For example, are things like free speech, strong borders, and recognition of biological difference really a right-wing position? Or should it be a pretty reasonable and agreeable center? And also, you've seen the modern Republican Party let go of positions like foreign interventionism, unhindered free international trade, and stark opposition to broad-based medical welfare programs. That's why it's interesting to see how both of these parties have morphed away from what originally used to define them. For Britain in particular, I think it may play out slightly worse for them, because remember, Britain does not have the strong legal guardrails like a First and Second Amendment to make sure there's an adequate opposing force that lends national politics a reasonable center. But let me know in the comments what you think, and share this video across your social media to get the word out. We're likely going to see many different manifestations of the political shift across nations that we've seen in America over the last decade.